If you're a landlord in the greater Houston, Texas area or greater Harris County area and you're going through an eviction right now or a really pesky tenant that is just troublesome and you need to evict, this video is made for you. We're going to walk you through the eviction process and understand how it works. We're actually local investors here ourselves in the Katy, Texas area, and the reason we made this video was to connect with our community. We've gone through the eviction process multiple times ourselves and happy to help you where we can. We're not attorneys, so we can't give you any legal advice. There's certainly a lot of value an attorney can bring you, and this video may actually help you kind of understand some of the process, risks, etc. that go along with it. So we're going to cover three things in this video. Number one, we're going to cover the process of the eviction in Harris County, Texas, as it is today. Number two, we're going to help you understand some of the costs to consider in that process and the whole holding costs, etc. Number three, we're going to give you two options at the end of this video on how to avoid the eviction process completely. So stick around with us and we'll dive into more details. Now we're going to make a few assumptions in this video. We're going to make the assumption that the eviction that you are doing is due to non-payment, and this video is based around that. It's nothing to do with foreclosures on a property or other things like that. If you have a note on the property, these are different videos, different conversations. But if your tenant is not paying rent, this is kind of the process that you would follow as a whole to do an eviction in Harris County, Texas. The whole process from starting to end should take about 1.5 to 2 months to complete the eviction. And keep in mind that at the end of this video, I'm going to give you two options to avoid the eviction completely. You could probably be done with it, both of them, within a week or two. Now we're going to start off with the steps of the eviction, and keep in mind that there's an online link that will be in this video and on our website as well, depending on where you found this video, where you can get the detailed step-by-step instructions from Harris County in much more detail. This is just to simplify the process. So number one, you're going to give a notice to your tenant that they are late on payment for eviction. You can't just call them and you can't just email them. There's a lot of very specific criteria on what needs to be in this notice and how it's to be delivered. Now, sitting in the courthouse, if you've been in the courthouse for evictions before, you'll find that the most popular way of delivering that notice is to place the written notice sticky side on the inside of the tenant's door. That's correct, the front door of the main unit or the main door of the unit. It's a very specific place. So it needs to be written notice. It needs to be delivered and placed on the inside of the door. There are other options for delivery. However, there's multiple reasons why most landlords choose that method of delivery. The next step, you'll want to head down to the local courthouse and file the actual eviction notice. Now the courthouse has the paperwork that you need to fill out and file that out. You can actually fill it out ahead of time online and bring it in with you to complete that process a little quicker and pay the fees. But they're going to need some basic information. What's your name, information, address, contact? What's the tenant's name, information? Where are they working? Are they in the military, etc., etc., etc.? Fill out all those affidavits and forms, and then you're going to deliver, hey, this is my grounds for eviction or why I'm filing for eviction, and maybe some supporting documents that go along with that. So once that's all filled out, you'll give that to the clerk at the courthouse along with your fee to file that, and they will schedule the next hearing. Once the clerk schedules the court date, and they're going to send out an issuance of the citation. So both you and the tenant will receive a formal communication in the mail that there is a court hearing. It's going to inform both of you when is that court date, what is it about, who is involved. Typically the tenant will actually receive that citation from the sheriff, which is part of the reason why you're paying some of the fees to have that citation delivered. But the police will deliver that to the tenant. The next step is the trial. You're going to have a trial date and a trial time to appear. When you get there, there's actually going to be quite a few people. Usually the courtroom is full of people who are also there for court hearings. And you're not going to be called up right at your time. You're going to get there probably 15-20 minutes early, and you'll be there for 3-4 hours while the whole group of people goes through, and you'll hear multiple trials as well. And the judge asks for different things with each trial. So it's important to have all your paperwork organized and with you ahead of time, because they may ask you for different things based on the conversation with both you and the tenant, who's the defendant. Some of the different things that the judge may ask you for is a copy of your lease signed by both you and the tenant, proof of ownership of the property that you have, like the deed, They may ask for the proof of the delivery of the notice to vacate, that 3-day notice to vacate that we talked about previously. They're going to ask for your rent records. So basically they want to see receipts, or they want to see a bank statement that outlines, hey, they paid, then all of a sudden they didn't pay, right? Some proof that they have non-payment. And then they're going to ask for a number of different things. It could be maintenance records, it could be communications that you've had throughout time via email or text. It could be other witnesses that were involved, either knowing that the payments were late or that they were causing problems, whatever that reason for the eviction is. These could vary really on a case-by-case basis. So it's important to have a lot of this documentation prepared beforehand and be ready to pull it out quick, because you don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of people before you and a lot of people after you, and the judge will be wanting to see papers quickly. Now, in that trial, the judge will award one or the other party as the correct party, right? If the tenant is said to be in the right and you were in the wrong, then they will give you a notice of intention of dismissal, essentially giving you a time period in which you can bring additional documentation to prove that the tenant was at fault, and they will reschedule that hearing. Now, it already took you 30 days to get to this court hearing, so usually it's going to take another 30 days to have another court hearing in which you can come back if that is the case. So it's important you get your paperwork lined up correctly and you have everything ready to draw when they ask you for information. Now, if they give you, the plaintiff, the award here on this case, then the case will be sent out. The tenant will owe you the remaining funds. You'll still have to collect those funds, and they will be evicted, and we can move on to the next step in the eviction process. So if you, the plaintiff, has been awarded this case and you were found to be in the right, then the next step is to issue a writ of possession. So you would wait to receive the actual paperwork from the court showing that, and it's usually a next day or so, showing that you are in the right. And then there's a waiting period. Usually it's around 6 days or so in Harris County, where you can then go to the courthouse again and issue a writ of possession. So what happens here, you're at the courthouse, you'll request for the paperwork for a writ of possession, you'll fill that out, you'll pay the appropriate fee, and then a sheriff or a constable, typically within 24 to 48 hours after that's filled out, will go to the tenant and to inform them that they need to leave the property and remove that tenant. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. It actually rarely does. Usually at this point, the tenant knows and they're on their way. They're moving out. But if that does occur, the sheriff and the constable will help you remove the tenant from the property and their belongings. And of course, there's some headaches with that, but they'll walk you through that process if that time comes. Whole point here is the eviction process is not very fun. It's really important to have your paperwork in line and have it in order. There's a lot of attorneys that are very experienced with the eviction process and can help represent you to make sure that it's done correctly at the right time. They just have these systems and processes down. They're going to ask you for certain paperwork, and they just handle the rest. That's a very good way to go through the process of eviction. If you're thinking about doing it yourself, certainly read this article that's in our website here or in this video, and dive into more details before you go, because this video is covering things at a very high level. Now, costs for the eviction. There's several costs that you need to consider when you're looking at an eviction. Number one is court fees. Court fees are actually a pretty small portion of this. It's about $300 all in all, right? And then number two is rent. You're gonna have about lost rent, probably 2 to 4 months of lost rent by the time you go through the process of eviction, you get it cleaned up, and then you rent it out. Again, you're gonna have about 2 to 4 months of vacancy. And with that, you may have other costs like mortgage, insurance, and taxes prorated. A lot of people don't really know what their insurance and taxes are prorated, but it's good to just take that number, calculate it out, see what it is, right? The other thing too is you may have legal fees. If you're hiring a lawyer to represent you, then check with your lawyer to see how much that's going to cost. Then of course, with the eviction, you may have some repairs or cleanup. Typically we see an eviction can cost anywhere from $2,000 on the light end to tens of thousands of dollars. It really depends on a lot of things, the size of the house, what the tenants did to the house. There's a lot of untold things that could have occurred. And of course, any deferred maintenance that you may have had in the process while they were there. So Repairs can be a process, and then one last thing you're going to want to do is make sure you get your locksmith in there and have a locksmith change out the locks on that property, probably 150 bucks, give or take. And then of course, this is kind of like the standard cost for any tenant change out you have, but you're going to have some advertising costs. Now, if you're using a realtor, usually a realtor might charge you half of the first month's rent or a full first month's rent, depending on how that works, where you are. And there's those costs as well to getting a new tenant. If you are wanting to avoid the eviction process altogether, this is the third step we were talking about in the beginning of the video. There's two really good ways to avoid that process completely. The first way is called cash for keys. Cash for keys is this scenario. The tenant's late on rent, they're in non-payment. You go to the tenant and you say, hey, look, here's your notice that we're going to put on the inside of your door. By the way, if you are willing to leave this house in 1 to 2 weeks, sign this paperwork here that states you're leaving and getting out of your lease, I will give you X amount of dollars. Maybe it's $500, maybe it's $1,000, right? But you need to make sure and promise me that you're going to have all your things out, the lease is going to be done, and you're going to have this place swept clean, right? This can give the tenant, whatever situation they're in that caused them not to pay your rent, an option to get a little bit extra money, and they can use that on the next property that they're going into and leave that property, maybe bypassing a lot of those costs, all the extra mortgage payments you're going to have, all the extra repair costs, maybe the stress and anxiety of things, and all the time that the property is vacant. So these are things that you could do to be proactive with it. Another way you could go about this is actually reaching out to a local investor, much like ourselves. We have gone through multiple evictions before, and we will buy houses from other investors directly, even with tenants. And the way we do that, within TREC, the Texas contracts that are out there, there is an option to assume the lease that's already in place. So we can go through the process of just assuming the lease. We buy the house directly with the tenant in it. We deal with the eviction. We deal with the paperwork. We deal with the repairs. We deal with everything. And that process can be done within 1 to 2 weeks because we use a cash purchase or hard money to purchase that property, and it can be done really fast, really easy. It's really as simple as signing the contract and we're done with it. I hope this video helped you. If we can help you in any way, just connecting with you, feel free to reach out to us, call the number on our website or fill out the form. We'd be happy to be in touch with you.